This video, I'd like to take maybe a look at the inside of the Amprobe AM-140-A. So there's 4 screws on the back right here that you remove to gain access, and it's supposed to be sort of a snap action up here at the top, so the instructions kind of indicate you pull from the bottom. So take the screws out first. That's the cover. And the screws are kind of held in place here, so they're captive. They have self-tapping. They're going into the plastic. And it looks like to get the case completely off, we need to do 2 more screws. And these screws have rubber O-rings around them. So it's supposed to be lifted from this, yeah, and I just felt it snap up there to release the at the top. And it looks like not too much there. And here's the inside. Just take the battery off. And then try to zoom in a little closer. And we kind of take a look here where we can see it. Has a riser board here that goes up to the rubber membrane buttons and all the contacts on there. They appear to be gold plated. Rotor switch, you see is right here. And we have some flash protection, high voltage flash protection. Looks like that can be removed. And it passes all the way through the board. So you have some high voltage slots there for protection. It appears that the connectors are right to the board, and there's also rubber O-rings around each of the connectors. Here are the 2 fuses for input protection on the current ranges. One thing that bothers me, I've noticed quite a few meters that I've opened in the past. If you notice that the snap holders right here for this fuse, it's only making contact with about maybe a half or even a little less than that. And I'm surprised that these can't be adjusted so that we don't get a much higher, better contact between them like this fuse. So here there's this gap. Might be some different type fuses that would go into here. I'm not sure why they do that. Have our, looks like that's our current shunt right there for the 10 amp range. Rotary switch. And then some high voltage protection and input overload protection. Have a pretty large resistor there. This looks like a thermistor. Not sure what's in this next one to it. And then it looks like we have some metal oxide varistors, some MOVs here for and a couple different sizes. One's quite a bit larger than the other 2. So it looks like we have 3 there. So in general, it looks like the inputs are pretty well protected with this circuitry. Looks pretty decent. I noticed they're using heat shrink on the leads that are going up there. That's a nice touch. And again, the screws are that were in here are not into metal inserts, so they just go into the plastic. Really haven't had a problem with that, but it does look nicer sometimes when you have metal inserts to make the connection. Here, kind of just show you a little bit close-up view of some of the stuff. See some surface mount diodes in there, again probably for over voltage protection. probably can eye a crystal through there, down on that point right there, and all the main processing is probably done under the board. I've noticed that this meter, and there's several other manufacturers that seem to be making pretty much the same meter features and even same switch positions. So I think they're all probably using the same chipset. Nothing wrong with that. It does have some shielding on the sides there. Okay, taking a little additional look, I removed the riser board, and you can see it has a few components on the back of it, right there. And you can see that there's a hybrid, probably resistor array right across here. And then we have, really it looks like mainly a two-chip set. This is one of the chips right here. This is a BTC AD-85-4. And then I'm going to use a flashlight so you can see the main chip tilted up here, highlight in there, and you can see it right in the back. And that's a BTC 0192040C. And those two probably make up the main operational capabilities of the meter, and that's probably why there's a lot of lookalikes out there, because they're probably using the same chipset. I'm a bit of a coward to take it apart any further. It looks like there's some snap clips up here at the top, and I'm not sure how it's held in place at the bottom. So since I own it and I want to keep myself happy when I put it back together, I don't think I'll take it apart any further. You can also probably spot the crystal right there. Okay, I've got it back together, so let's see if I'm going to be happy or sad. And it looks like I'm going to be happy. Here I'm just measuring the current. I set the power supply up for 9 volts, and you can see with it powered on, it's drawing 4.45 milliamps. Kind of run through the ranges to see if any range draws a lot more or a lot less. Yep, so about 4.4 or so, 4.5 milliamps seems to be the highest draw, of course, with not counting the backlight. So I'll turn the backlight on. And about 27, 28 milliamps. So again, with the backlight off, about 4.5 milliamps, rounding up just a little bit. In this setup, I have the meter just measuring a 10K resistor, and we're seeing the current, of course, it's drawing, and it's set to 9 volts. So I'll just start turning the voltage down, and we'll see when it starts changing its value. So we're down at 7 volts, works fine. 6 volts seems to work just fine. There, it's starting to be a little bit of a change there at 5.7 volts. And boy, I like this. It's very quick action. It blanks the display. So it turns the display reading off and shows the error. And it's a really quick threshold. And that occurred around about 5.5, 5.6 volts. So it gives you a little bit of an idea. The battery can be down quite a bit from its 9 volt specification. In this video, I'd like to go over the Amprobe data logging software package. Most places I've seen seem to be selling around $60. That's approximately what I paid. And for that, you get a disk with the software drivers, the program, and a manual on there. And it's classified as a USB interface, but in reality, it's actually RS-232. So you get the cable with the optical coupler for the meter. It terminates into a DB9 connector, RS-232. There's an adapter if you need a 25 pin. And then you get a module that converts from the RS-232 to the USB. And then they give you also the USB cable. So on this particular one, you just simply connect the RS-232 to the module converter. tighten it down, and then you take the USB and plug that into there. And then you take, of course, the other end and plug it into your computer. My computer's just up here, it's out of the way. I'm not going to show it, but I'm just plugging it into the USB port on my computer. And kind of move the cabling out of the way a little bit. So it's out of the way of the screen. The connection to the meter is pretty easy. On the back, you can see that you have your optical connections. It's keyed on this particular jack right here. And so you can just simply bring this up at a slight angle, maybe 1 o'clock or something. Goes in real easy. Then simply twist it, and that locks it into place. Seems to be a good connection. And quite a bit of cable, haven't uncoiled it. Then you can turn on your device. You don't have to push a link or an interconnect to it. It will be detected hopefully by the computer. When I installed the software and the drivers, it found COM port 6. And I did have a problem. It wouldn't let me click the radio button for COM port 6 until I closed the application down and then relaunched it. And then it found it, and I didn't have any trouble with that. So I've found it seems to be the best way to work it is to have the unit on and then launch the application. So I'll go over here and I'll launch the application. I'll also take the video for you here in just a second and zoom in on the screen. And it's under a data logger folder, and launch the application. And I'll just go ahead and adjust the camera so that you can see it. I'm going to not use a screen capture. I'm going to just try to take it right off of the monitor. So we'll see how that works out. And also what I plan to do is I have a switch box here for resistors, like a decade box. And I'm going to plug that into the unit, set it up for ohm scale. And that way I can just dial in some different resistances. Right. So here's the data logger software launched. Again, like I said, capturing just directly off the screen. So hopefully that won't be too bad. Adjustment there. And up in this corner you have some different buttons that you can use to select different modes. Some of these buttons are repeated in the menus that drop down from the top. There's not a lot there. This button over here is the link button, or you can do it from this menu selection. So if I click this, right now the meter is reading 0.9955 ohms, so k ohms, excuse me. So I click that, and you can see it comes up on this digital display. Basically what you have in this environment is you've got this sort of overall window, and then these are some panes that can be pulled around, and you can either increase them or decrease some of them and scale a few. So for example, if I come up here, I can just grab the digital one, I can pull it off to the side. You can move your multimeter. Analog meter, you can collapse that meter. It ends up down over in this corner right here, which you can see, and you can then bring it back again. And you can, this particular one, like I said, is the analog meter. This one is the digital. This one right here is your data list of which will list the points, time, and the values. Over here is sort of the main pane that you would use, and that's the data logger. Where you can set up, you can manually data log, automatically data log, set an interval. One thing I wish it had was it's all auto ranging. It would be kind of nice if you could manually set that up a little bit. It does have a zoom feature though, so you can zoom in on the window. You can also change the colors of the trace if you like, make custom color, whatever you want to do. And so most of the stuff you set up is right into here. You can also print this particular page. And basically what it does is it will capture 200 data points across here, and then it creates another page of another 200 data points. So what happens if you run this for a long time, you end up with multiple pages, and there's some navigational buttons in here where you can move back and forth to look at the pages. Also, if you had 3 or 4 pages and you really just want one graph, there is a button that will combine all the data points onto the singular graph for you. So reasonably versatile. If you get all of these panes all messed up and everything, you can retile them with this button up here. And pressing them, it puts them back in the default. If you change them and like it to remember it, it doesn't do that. At least I'm not aware of how you can do that. It always goes back to this one. Some of the panes you can adjust. You'll get the double arrows and you can move them up and down, horizontal, vertical. Other panes you can't do that. And on this one, which is kind of a disappointment, you get the double arrows, but it won't let you move it. At least I can't see any way of rescaling this, which might be kind of convenient. There is one additional pane that doesn't show up by default, and that's a comparator. And so you can go up here and you can click it. So these buttons up at the top here can select each one of these panes. So if you happen to close your digital meter pane down or reduced it or something, and you just want to bring it back up, you can just go over to each one of them, and there's a digital meter. Click on it, it pops it right back. On the comparator one, you push this and it brings up a little pane that's again floating, and you can set limits. Right now I have it set at 2.2K for an upper limit, 1.8K for a lower limit. And if you click on this button, this is where you set those limits. So for example, if I was assuming I was going to put in a 2K resistor, so I'll dial it in on the switch box, just flip it up here, and there you can see it pops up and shows me a 2K resistor. Maybe they're 10% resistors and I'd like to keep it within those limits. So 10% of 2K is 200 ohms, so add 200, you get 2.2K, and subtract 200, you get 1.8K, and that could set your limits. And then this is sort of a no-go thing. It also has audio. It beeps a high pitch for above the limit you referenced and a low pitch when you're down below to the lower limit past it. These seem to be lights, I think. They're not buttons if you click on them. And I assume they would be lights that as you move back and forth in here, they light up. But I can't find anything that happens to these. They just sort of sit there. So I'm not sure, maybe when you have the audio on with the speaker that they light, but I haven't been able to see them light. So we can take a look at that in a couple minutes too. Over here, again, is your main window, as I indicated. This is where you do your acquisition. If you just want to look at your values, I could just be flipping switches. I'm not taking any data points. And again, you can see we're out of the limit, so we're getting a beep, but no light lights up. And I'll just turn that off. And you can see that we were over limit. And right up on the analog, right about full scale deflection before it goes to the next one. One thing I should mention on the comparator, which I don't like, is if you set these limits and you have auto ranging on, and say it drops to 100 ohms, when auto ranges down, these limits change to that particular range. So if you want to lock it into this range, you need to set the meter to manual ranging and not auto ranging. So I wasn't thrilled with that. I would think if I auto ranged, if I set these limits, I want them to stay. So to me, that's a negative. Again, I'll bring this back up in just a couple minutes. Under this one, as I said, your main window, you have your acquisition and everything. The acquisition speed is dictated by the processor and the interfaces and what range you're on and what mode you're in on the meter. Typically, it seems about the fastest it can acquire data is about 1 second every second. So if you need something faster, high-speed data acquisition, then this probably isn't going to do it. But obviously the meter is a limitation too, how quickly it can acquire the value that you want. If you just take it and run it under this little tool here, under automatic, at full speed, like I said, it's approximately once a second or so. You can also set it to manual. In a manual mode, and you can have it acquire by pushing a button on the bar up here. So let's just acquire some data so you can see kind of how it handles this. I'll leave it at automatic, and to start it, you just have a Start-Stop button over in this corner. So if I just start it, it rescales the unit, centers around these values that are on the scale, and you can see, I hope you can see, yeah, it looks like it's probably showing this up. Again, it's just a video. And we're moving it across, and it's time stamping the scale. And so this piece occurred at a certain time. When it hits it, right at this point, it'll show it up. So we started data acquisition at 11:29, 50 seconds or so. That's where it was, or I guess it was just a little bit before that. And as you move across each time, it will take this value and add it and keep each one of these. So if you stop anywhere, you do have the data as a function of these time intervals. And of course, over here on this one, it's showing all of your inputs. And if we change it, because that's not very exciting, we go down to 1K or something, we can have it drop down. up, I'm sorry, I had some switches in the wrong position. I forgot to put that 5K on there. I was going to say, that's strange. So there's the 1K, as we can see right here. And then you can stop it wherever you want. So if I stop it, it takes maybe the last one, and here's my time. So this is the first one that we started at, was right over here at this point. You can zoom in on a particular area you like. You can also, there's a line over here, marker, and if you notice, if I'm moving my hand, my cursor across this, it changes into a hand. And so you can go to a particular point, and if you click on that, it'll put the marker there, and then it will read out that time period at that value. It also gives you min and maximums. Again, I'll zoom into that maybe a little bit and see if that's helpful. So if I come up to here and just kind of zoom in, you can get a little closer look at what those look like. So basically you have, as I indicated, you have the cursor position time, which is right here. You have the value at that position of the cursor, and this of course is the overall data set showing you what the highest value was and what the lowest value was. Again, this is the start stop for it. This sets your interval time, and you can also run it in manual mode if you like. And you can print the screen, you can save it to a file. It's a text data file, and it's a comma space separated for the values, so it's a CSV. And of course you can erase your data if you like. Another thing that you can do, if we move back out on this again, I'll just kind of back the screen out so you can see it a little bit. And come in over here. You can highlight this. I didn't really say this. I didn't see any place where it talked about this. But if you just click here, and you can drag a box around something, it will then zoom in on just that area. And then you can also place the cursor at that point of interest, click on it. And you're not seeing it here, but it's giving me those time period and amplitude, again, up at the top bar. So kind of moving back to that over here, it's giving me, the time. We can see it's like 37 seconds here, and the value is 5.0067 k ohms. So that's kind of convenient. In the manual, it does talk about zooming out. Like I said, I didn't see a place where it talked about how you zoomed in, but that's the way that you would work it. For zooming out, you just hit the magnifying glass up here. It has a minus in it. If I click this, it takes me back to the original data. And you can erase the data. It will warn you. On this particular unit, it has what they, in quotes, call a real-time buffer. And what it basically does is it's acquiring the data. It's writing all the data points, not just to memory, but also to the hard drive under a temp file in the folder where this was installed. So if you had a crash or something, you've been taking data for 2 days or so, you probably can retrieve most of that data and you haven't lost it where it might have been sitting in memory. And in terms of the number of data points, they indicate it's pretty much unlimited. So there's no upper limit other than, excuse me, the hardware. Okay, we mentioned the idea about interval time and how you can set that. So if you go to this icon right there, click it, you can see we're at full speed. We can come down here and we can customize that, and you can type in an input integer value. It won't take fractional parts, so it's in seconds. So the smallest increment of that you can access your data samples is every second. I haven't verified that it can really do this, but I assume it can. You can put it in, for example, if you wanted 24 hours, something like that. You can back her up and you can put in 24 hours, so it'd be in terms of seconds, so that's 86,400 seconds. Not too hard, I mean, once you have that set up, you click that. And now if I start the acquisition, it's going to make 1 sample every day from the starting point. Again, if I click the customization and say you want it every week, then you would put in that value, which would be 604,800 seconds will give you a week. And you click that and then start it. Now it's going to take a sample once a week. And I assume you can do months, or I'm not sure what the upper limit of this value is. You might want to see how you can change the interval here as we were showing before. And so just as a demonstration, let's say we want to set it up for every 5 seconds to take a sample. You would go down to here, simply put in your 5 seconds, Click OK. And now when you start the system, it should be sampling every 5 seconds. So if I bring up the data window right here, and if you take a look at it, notice right there it was 12 seconds, the next one's 17, next one's 22. Those are increments of 5 seconds. And there's your data points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values, and the time it was taken. And then we can stop that again if we like. And there we had those set up. Let's say you'd like to do the manual acquisition, where you're manually doing it yourself. We can go up here, we can just set it to manual, click OK. And now additional button becomes highlighted. This is the manual acquisition button. Each time you press that, it will take some data. So if we zoom over to the data list, which is down over here, kind of zoom in there a little bit so you can kind of see it. I'll go ahead and I'll clear it out from previous data. So it's there, it's cleared. And now if I press this button, it takes a data sample. If I press the button again, it takes another one. Press it a couple times. Put a pause in there. So this way allows you, if you're making some measurements and you just want to manually do that. And the graph and everything is still working. Here you can see we have some data points in here, just some random ones. And if you want to save it, you can use this button right here, and it saves it under their proprietary G51 file format. And you can bring them back in and read them, zoom in, take a look at those. If you want to bring it into Excel spreadsheet or another spreadsheet and do graphing and everything, you use the export button. When you click export, you have a choice across here. You can do bitmaps and text only. That's the one we're after. I'm going to save it as a file. And then you can just again, navigate to wherever you'd like to go. I'll just call this test 1. And then click save. And then a little trick here is it hasn't actually saved it yet. You need to then click export. And now it actually saved it out there. You can launch your spreadsheet. And open the file. You can go to Documents. There's test 1 right there. Open. And then it's asking how you would like to use it. And this one is separated by commas. So we set that up like that. If you click out the extra spaces, then you get a nice grouping. Click OK. And there you can see our data points have been brought in. And you can, of course, graphing, modify them, put some functions on them to scale them into a different way. So quite versatile. So that was kind of an overview of the data logging software. It's, to my knowledge, it's not bidirectional, so there's no way that you can change ranges. I have other meters where you can do that and change the ranges. You have to do them manually on the meter, and then it lets you know. It also turns off the APO, so for long sampling times, you don't have to worry about it shutting itself down. And it will also identify if the battery's getting low, so you will get a warning about that, which I haven't confirmed, but the instructions indicated it will do that for you. So it seems a little overpriced. It's a little over $60, but overall, pretty happy with it, and looks like it can do a pretty decent job and is reasonably flexible, even though some of the sizing of the windows and a couple of the features don't seem to work quite correctly. So how do I feel about the meter? Some positives: it seems to be constructed very nicely. Performance seems to be very good. I like almost all of the features. Not very thrilled with the backlight display, and I wished it was a touch hold for that particular function. I think the data logger software needs improvement in a few places, but again, overall quite usable. And I would give a thumbs up. I think the meter is a good purchase for the price.